Good afternoon. My name is Tim Bailey. I'm with Red Date Technology, who is the technical architect of the blockchain-based service network, or the BSN. Today, we're here with another episode of BSN Long Story Short, episode number 21, I believe. And the focus of today's panel is to talk about building trust with IoT using blockchain technology. And we have a panel of experts here today. And before we get into questions, I would like to go around the virtual room and ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And so let me start with you, Chris.
Thank you, Tim. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Wang. I'm the Business Development Manager from AWS. AWS stands for Amazon Web Services. Very nice to meet everyone here virtually today.
Next, how about you, Fan?
Thanks. So my name is Fan from Thoughtworks, Security and System Research BU. I'm right now acting as a technical principal and also a consultant, closely work with large enterprises. Like, for example, in IoT industry, we work closely with Lenovo and Huawei, those kind of companies for their innovation and your product design.
Okay, great. And finally, good to have you. Finally, Juan Manuel.
Hello, I am talking to you from Salamanca, from the University of Salamanca, where I am a professor and the director of the BSN research group. I am also president of the ERA Institute and the leader of the IoT Digital European Hub developed in this region. Basically, we are focused in working on AI and apply to different areas, especially on IoT.
Okay, great. So let me, maybe Juan Manuel, I'll start with you. Can you explain IoT, or the Internet of Things, in plain words so even a layperson can understand what it is?
Okay, I'll do my best. Basically, IoT is conceptually a very interesting reality nowadays that allow us to access to any type of device, to machine, sensor, building, vehicle, to extract data and act on it in an efficient and intelligent way in real time. This data, with the data, we can make decisions, especially if we use artificial intelligence, and we can automate the decision-making process. So it's an evolution of everything on over internet. So in a way, now we are generating value, taking information from our environment, from everything which is in our environment, and we can do it in a very safe, secure way, and with very good technology developed in the last decade. And so we can perform projects in for example, in the industry 4.0 or 5.0 nowadays, for example, preventive maintenance, improving the management of smart cities, medical devices, and security elements we all know.
Okay, good. Thank you. Chris, let me turn to you. What role can an IoT system play in the digital transformation of enterprises today?
That's a good question, Tim. I think when I'm trying to echo on Juan's answer about the benefits, Juan has already mentioned some of the benefits or some of the ultimate ideal scenarios for applying IoT on the modern digital transformation. We can take a step back to what traditionally the state is without Internet of Things, IoT. Without Internet of Things, we're talking about maybe like in the early 90s or early 2000s, we have an Internet of sites or Internet of people. And even nowadays, a lot of the content on internet are generated by people, are generated by our PCs, our own devices by us, right? These are all content that has already been transformed and ready to be viewed. And I think the benefits, the role that Internet of Things it plays right nowadays is it gives us a much wider, broader visibility of data, because now we don't only with IoT, we are not only seeing the state of some content created by human. We actually are able to know the state of virtually everything. And then we could derive value, we could reason on top of those data. So originally, IoT can be I think it can be a door opener for every different use cases on a much wider data sources, a much wider channels of data. But then on top of that, the IoT, eventually what the value that it is bringing to today's world, the whole digitalization stage, is that it gives possibilities for us to further derive value from those data. So we can apply technologies like data analytics tools, we can utilize machine learnings, we can do predictive analysis on top of those data. And it further, with those data, it further creates better user experience. It creates better optimized processes, both for enterprises and for general consumers like us. Right? And I think a very typical example is just like Amazon.com itself. Like as consumers, we probably notice that if we want to really shop something online, we can basically just utilize, for example, voice assistants like Alexa, and we can get shipment back to our door. And as consumers, we have a lot of demand on both the quality of service of the shipment, as well as the information that we are exposed to, that we can get about the shipment, about the products that are purchased. And these data can be actually sourced from the product itself. It also can be sourced from the vehicles transporting that shipment. And it can be it also can be gathered even from like the material supplier, etc. We can get those information in real time, and that is all thanks to IoT. So it plays a role, I think, in generally of basically improving the quality of life, and also providing more innovative features and product improvements to companies like to enterprises.
Okay, good. Juan, can you give us some examples of actual IoT deployments or use cases in various industries that you've worked in? I'd love to hear some examples.
Yeah, so I can give like two examples. One is about our daily life, like especially when it comes to home kits, your television, your housekeeping, like a lot of cameras. You probably want to set up some security environments that can help you to do some surveillance on your own house or your belongings that probably may be infected by other people previously. So right now, people are setting up more and more cameras, just trying to take care of their kids. If you are having babies, recently I'm planning to give birth to my first kid. So yeah, I'm starting to thinking about that.
You're already setting up your home surveillance system for your kid, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So that kind of things are becoming more and more common to be seen in our house. Previously, people never think about those CCTV stuff. We see that everywhere in the public areas, but not in our house. But right now, it coming to our house and then becoming more and more important to help us to understand what's the current status of our living environments. So this is one trend that I can see here from IoT's industry. And another part is about the more large enterprises are taking care of those large things like energy. So previously, I guess every kind of energy supplying companies, they are using some old ways to for example, if you are selling oil, the way that you're doing this kind of business is more like accounting. So you're calculating those resources that you are selling by non-digitalized way. So this take them a lot of time to make sure that the number is correctly calculated, because you can see in energy industry, one of their biggest pain point is how you really make sure that the resource that people are selling you is exactly that size or that kind of weight. So this kind of things is bothering them a lot previously, but right now, because you can set up those sensors in their miners, or when you're drilling those oils from the ground, at that point in time, you can start to track those kind of data. So this kind of data flowing to a data center or any kind of decentralized devices, and they can just calculate them or add some record of those kind of data and try to remember and transfer those data into their headquarters, so that they can finally get that amount of their business or how much resources they are exchanging with each other. So this is becoming more and more common that we can see in those kind of, especially the energy industry, that they are adopting IoT devices much as possible.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about kind of merging of technologies, right? There's a lot of very popular, trendy technologies today: AI, machine learning, blockchain, IoT, and things get even more interesting when we talk about combining different technologies. So, in a particular solution. So let's talk a little bit more about blockchain and IoT together. And Juan, Manuel, I'm gonna start with you. Can you talk about some of the advantages of blockchain technology in the context of IoT as we kind of merge them together in a solution?
Yes, Tim. Actually, found nice points. I am completely agree with you what you just said. But blockchain is nowadays a very mature technology. It's nowadays also easily to deploy interesting solutions, and it allows us to easily deploy distributed, for example, management project, which is what you want. You want to manage data on a distributed way, offering reliability to the user in a decentralized way, without the need of a central authority, and providing, in a way, security to the users. So more and more people are involved on blockchain projects, and I think that one of the biggest or the stronger elements that attract users to the users of blockchain, the fact that there is no a centralized authority, and the fact that we can all manage and handle the data in a secure way and trustable. So on the other hand, the blockchain facilitates the development of traceability projects, for example. Nowadays, we live in a world where thanks to IoT, we have access to information on real time from all the elements we want to involve on our project. And the point is we can acquire the data in real time from devices that have already been improved and can connect easily with a blockchain. So from that point of view, Industry 4.0, or even now we are talking about Industry 5.0, smart cities, smart grids, smart buildings for the medical sector. We have now all the elements we need to generate value. Generate value by providing users intelligent access to the data and creating a more secure environment for them where everything or almost everything can be under control. Even with the AI we use now, we can predict, we can forecast, we can in a way to determine what may happen, so we can get ready for that. And the combination of IoT with blockchain and with other technologies, like you just said, for example, AI, or for example, the power we can have now by analyzing images even in real time with convolutional networks to extract knowledge, to know who is around, and to generate information of value. For example, for a shopping center or for a mall, for the managers of a smart city, something that is changing our environment slowly but surely. And I believe we will see a great number of new software deployments based on these three technologies combined together.
So blockchain, IoT, and AI. Okay.
Yes,
great.
I think so.
Yeah, and I think to add on Juan's opinion about the combination, it really, I think blockchain and IoT, they synergize with each other a lot when we are thinking about like real life problems or real life challenges of the existing state of IoT. For example, I'll just take a very industrial example of supply chain management over IoT technology. Without blockchain, we have to think about, first of all, what kind of, because eventually IoT is very data driven. And for blockchain management, for supply chain management, we are thinking about different data sources, different data channels. So over the whole ecosystem, let's say for a end-to-end IoT solution that we want to ensure a supply chain management, we have to think about, like, from the source, the manufacturer, the material suppliers, to the middleman, which is going to be maybe the wholesalers and the retailers, and then at the end of the day, it goes to the consumers. There are multiple members, multiple parties in the same ecosystems, and in the traditional world, managing this supply chain data, even though we can collect it from different data sources, eventually we have to think about how to break down the data silos between these different parties. They all use different technologies, different systems. So I think one of the very important benefit, or even like probably the most crucial one about blockchain, is it creates a single source of truth that is tamper-proof and verifiable, and it breaks down the data silos. Another thing is, with that single source of truth, it also allows lower time to market. And why? Because it, for example, like the parties that I mentioned, they are different channels of data. You might start with just one or two channels at the beginning, but in the future, there may be new channels of data source coming in. For example, there may be a new channel of wholesalers. They want to join the network and they want to share their IoT data into the network. So with blockchain, it has a standard protocol, right? It has a also very fast and smart contractual process to help these different business entities enter into a commercial agreement very fast. And it has also a consensus standard of data format, or the maybe the authority management, etc., for the new members joining into this ecosystem. So really, when we think about a long-term in futuristic vision, IoT with blockchain will allow us a much faster speed to market, because you're able to plan for the future expansion of data sources.
Good. So we hear a lot these days around technologies like blockchain and like IoT being used to kind of underpin digital transformations in enterprises. So as we think about IoT, these smart connected devices, in a secure network gives you access to better and safer information, enabling, as you all have talked about, enabling organizations to make better decisions. So, Fan, I'm going to go to you with this question. When you're out talking to the companies, your clients that you're working with, what difficulties do you encounter with those companies in trying to help them with their digital transformations and talking to them about IoT and blockchain solutions? And I ask that question because, both of the technologies, both blockchain and IoT, are somewhat, complex, and certainly in some cases complicated to implement. So, tell us a little bit about some of the difficulties you may encounter with your clients.
Yeah, so as far as I can remember, most of our clients, when we started communicating with them about this kind of emerging tech, they always ask us a question how we can evolve into that scenario. So they are very excited to talk about those, just free to chat about those kind of topics. But when they start to really think about how they can adopt this kind of technology in their current business, they become more and more struggling about how they can really, it's not like purchasing a device and deploy that to your office. It's not that simple, because especially when it comes to IoT and the blockchain, this kind of technology that require you to transform your business into a more digitalized way. For example, if a company that is not yet doing any kind of e-commercial selling that kind of business model, they are very hard to adopt this kind of digitalized way to, for example, calculate their amount of sellings in a blockchain, because they haven't even start to adopt that e-commerce before we come into that point of time. So it's more like a evolving, we need to find a smooth way to help them to evolve into that era that they can all working in a model that is fully adopting this kind of technology, just like the air, just like breathing, like usual. So at that point in time, we have to use a more simpler language to talk with them. For example, if we talk about the blockchain, we don't describe about that chain structure or channel or those kind of digitalized or hash like Merkle tree. So those kind of concepts are too complicated for them. But when we start to draw that picture about how you can use a smart contract to describe your current contract, and how you can use your, for example, like a IoT. So currently you're having a person there that is taking care of a lot of monitoring work. But later, if you can replace that with an IoT device, you can probably get rid of this kind of cost to hiring a employee for just keeping an eye on some kind of thing. So those kind of simpler language can help them to really find out what is the change that will happen in those business, and comparing with the current status, what kind of minor change that will happen to them. It's not a very big change. It's not suddenly coming into their point of view. It's not gonna change in 1 second. Like Roman is not built in 1 day. So we have to think, so we have to think from their point of view, how they can gradually come into that point. So that becomes the most important and difficult thing that we are seeing right now.
And I think, and I'll ask Chris in a second. He's probably had a similar experience where, you have an enterprise or a business come to you and say, "Look, I want to use IoT or I want to use blockchain. What should I do?" Right? And you need to go back to, well, okay, what's the business problem you're trying to solve?
Exactly.
Right. And Chris, so tell us a little bit about how, I imagine you're with AWS, and 10 years ago it was cloud was the cool thing, and I want to go do cloud, right? And now it's IoT and blockchain. So how are you addressing the challenge of complexity?
Yes. So exactly like what you are mentioning about is definitely the whole journey that we have come across. Companies used to come to us about, I've heard about blockchain and I've heard about IoT, some very trendy technologies. What can we do about it? So we have to really work backwards with the company from the business outcome from the start, instead of tell them, go use IoT because it's cool. You always have to have a business value bounded towards the technology that you want to apply to your company strategy. So if the company, so we're not talking about any enterprises that already have a structured strategy and all they want to do is they want to start, get their hands dirty and working on the IoT right away. They are already experts. If they already know the vertical solutions very well and they have the technical resources, then that's not going to be a challenge. But we see more and more challenge about companies who are very new to the concept of IoT and blockchain. And they are really at the infant stage that they need someone to give them some hand-holding services to help them to understand whether this will benefit our company. Is there any evidence that can prove it has the value? And then can we start with something small? And what we want to encourage them is, first of all, we want to identify what business outcome could IoT or blockchain bring to them. And then we want to go with a idea, go with a use case. It can be a smaller use case instead of a very strategical one, okay? Because we want them to start small. And then we want to also let the customer know about what existing companies or existing projects are already there in the same industry. Learn from the others, learn from different use cases. Well, then when we want to start small, we would like to always tell the customer to start with the proof of value project. So conceptually, IoT blockchain people are well known about this, but a proof of value is really about, will this create value to your business or to a specific business unit of your company? And we want to do this from a relatively achievable and smaller projects. Enterprises work with us a lot to basically create an innovation lab or innovation hub among their own teams. Okay, they can have maybe not many, probably 5 to 6 people forming the project team to start work on a smaller use case. So instead of saying, okay, we have already built out a whole data lake, data warehouse of existing data, why don't we start with a smaller user experience improvement feature, or a more simple and structured way to achieve a small project. And once the project is completed, it can become a pilot. It can become also a advocate to really promote this internally in their company, right? So this is one of the things we have to work with the customer. We have to start from a use case, and we want to start small, and we want to always work backwards from the business outcome instead of what technologies to choose. And then we go into more detailed way of choosing the technology and discuss about how to achieve those.
Right. That makes sense. So Juan Manuel, we're going to shift a little bit and talk about some of the technology and environmental factors, right? So IoT as an industry grew very rapidly last year, and we see that intensifying in 2022 and beyond. Do you think that the recent adoption of 5G networks has played a role in that growth? And also, are there other technologies or other environmental factors that have helped drive the rapid growth of IoT?
Okay, we like to say, first of all, that the world changed very fast nowadays, but we keep in a way, most of the technologies, rather than to appear, obviously they appear at one point, they evolve. So if you remember, Tim, maybe Chris and Fan, they are too young for that, but I remember the previous century.
Chris, I think Chris and I are probably the same age. I don't know what you're talking
Maybe
about.
I'm older.
I think you three look like much younger than me, at least. But anyway, if you remember, we used to talk a lot about everything on IP, where all the machines used to be that were going to be connected. In a way, I understand that IoT is an evolution of that concept, but again. We have an evolution of AI. We have experimented a great change, and I started in the 80s working with AI, and actually by the end of the last century I was very bored about it. But with this century, with the evolution of network, everything has changed. Now the companies around us are asking us for more and more help, and the amount of projects we have are growing a lot. But again, communication have been there, and now we're evolving into this 5G. So we live in a world where AI is in there, is changing, where communication were others, but now we can have access to 5G. Even we are talking now about 6G, and then IoT is mature. So what we have to think, as Chris said before, we need to drive the companies into the right direction to identify where is the power of the combination of all of these technologies, and in particular of blockchain. Small samples are a reality, but nowadays we have large projects on traceability with international companies, and we can control the whole process. And in a way, since 5G is a reality, but the problem with it is that technology is there. We all know how to have 5G, but it's being implemented in a slow and uneven way, at least in Spain. And I think worldwide that is the major problem. Spain has a large telephony network, but the return to operators is in sparsely populated areas, or areas where with little activity is unclear. So probably the operators say, okay, we need to do the investment on technology, and the one getting the money are you two, our team and fund companies, not the operators. So that way the operators, at least in Spain, many other countries, I know that for sure, because we organized GlobeCom, which is the largest telecommunication conference worldwide in Madrid last year here in December. That's what all the operators said. We have to do a lot of investment, but we cannot recover ourselves the money, because there are not enough applications there that allow us to make business on get the return, especially in areas where the population is low. So in a way, it's our role now here in the universities, in our research institute, or from the IoT European Digital Innovation Hub I am managing to think on potential solutions that create value. And this is a role we are playing here, is interacting with other research centers, interacting with companies, interacting with users, and identify projects in the logistic area sector, in the industry 4.0. For example, we have large projects in precision farming, precision agriculture, in the medical sector, where you need trust, you need security, you need a combination of these communications and data access, AI to predict and to prevent what is going on, and so on. But yes, 5G, as any other communication system, will help a lot. But the point now, or the problem, I don't think are the communications or anything. It's just the need of strong ideas that generate value.
Right. Strong idea that generates value. Agree. Fan, let me go to you. You work at Thoughtworks, and your organization works across many different types of industries. So you have a good view of what's going on. What industries do you think will benefit from blockchain and IoT solutions? And can you give maybe a couple examples of industries or companies that you're working with?
Yeah, so I think previously we have been talking about those industries like Chris mentioned, supply chain heavy companies like the manufacturer or any other kind of, for example, a vehicle company or those large combined product companies. So they all require those kind of different components to be mixed together to form a kind of product. So in that kind of scenario, they must have some kind of supply chain. And because blockchain is providing a good and comprehensive economic system for them. So for in most of my experience, those companies, when they talk about supply chain, they actually are talking some part of the financial services that are internally currently serving them manufacturing business. They're not directly using blockchain for their manufacturer or the pipeline that produce those products, but they are using the blockchain as a financial service currently to exchange those goods with other suppliers or the vendors. And that can save them a lot of money and time when they are accounting, when they're doing calculation for their incomes or outcomes. So those kind of things are inspiring them to form a kind of economic system across this industry. And I can also see those kind of alliance that cross different companies, even then when they are competitors, they still show that interest to join one blockchain, because by this kind of change, when they can join those kind of blockchain community, they start to join that economic system, and when they are trading with each other, it actually benefits when they for example, when they buy too much things and they want to, sometimes they even want to sell some of them to their competitors. In that kind of scenario, previously it's out of imagine. They can't do that kind of thing because that will cause a lot of tax issue, and also they are not doing that kind of business. But right now, it's just like when you buy options or when you buy resources from the market or the stock market, they can do that kind of thing in a blockchain system without go to IPO into that market. So this is changing their mind. And also, from my point of view about the IoT specifically blockchain, many governments have that kind of interest to deploy a lot of IoT devices, and also adding a non-repudiation feature into their system. which is also relative to the blockchain. So as we mentioned, blockchain is a ledger that can help you to record a lot of data and try to keep the digest and make sure that the integrity of this data is protected and it's decentralized also. So you can deploy these kind of devices or IoT smart things into some very far, like in the village or in the countryside. Mm-hmm. So they can deploy those kind of devices there, and they will work in a very low power way and try to collect some of the data and also generate some data because when they are working. And those kind of data can also be collected gradually and into a centralized or headquarter. But during when they're transferring from the edge side into the center or the headquarter, the government may also want to consume or calculate and do some strategy or even giving command directly based on a localized data. So for example, like in pandemic, we can see some, like especially in China, we can see a lot of buildings, they deploy those kind of camera and try to collect people's temperature.
Thermal sensors, thermal cameras, right?
It's actually has been there before, but they are not collecting the temperature of your head. Right. So now so we can see this kind of device deployed in those buildings, and it becomes the entries that you always need to go through, and so those kind of data can be collected, and just to make sure these kind of data don't need to be transferred to a very like the headquarters, so they can directly consume that data. For example, they can make a decision in this building, how many people just entered into this building, and they can get the idea about, for example, your what's the risk currently you are having when someone is coming in and it behaves like a positive patient. So these kind of things are encouraging especially the government, because they need to take care of all the people. Right. It's not part of the people. It's not like a business. So they have to use those kind of way and deploy that in a more decentralized way, so that a localized institution or any kind of even just that community can decide on those kind of things. So it's trying to empowering the community with some kind of electric and digitalized solution for just that thing. But in the blockchain and IoT way, they can make this more efficient.
Yes. Chris, what about you? What industries do you think will benefit the most from blockchain and IoT solutions? And are there any specific examples that you at AWS are working with?
Yeah, so actually, Fan has just mentioned a very interesting area when he mentioned about the recent pandemic situation, and that gets me think about an example of what the IoT and blockchain technology can be applied over the healthcare industry. Because we all know, first of all, the really healthcare poses a number of challenges when connecting different devices, diagnostic devices or clinical devices. And the data that is transmitting also may include patient privacy and requires a lot of industry standards and protocols to manage the security. It is very important to be able to consolidate those data into a network that is secure and at the same time able to provide the visibility to really deliver more innovative approach, so that the patient can be taken care much faster and even they get more accessibility to healthcare services. So we're talking about things like virtual care, We're talking about things like home clinics. So people will maybe maybe part of the reason driving this whole innovation is due to the pandemic that we're facing. But nowadays, we do see the demand increasing for people to have to stay at home, but at the same time have to see the doctor. They have to sometimes even do self-injections, for example. And that means that there will be a lot of clinical devices that is not going to be at the center of just a hospital or a particular hub. There might be satellite hubs of clinical resources or even home devices that apply that kind of care. And IoT and the blockchain can help in this because, of course, for IoT, it provides the platform that can interchange all this data. At the same time, blockchain provides a tamper-proof and immutable network with a mutual trust built on top of it. And a lot of people may also be concerned about privacy, but blockchain is not going to always be public. There are permission blockchain, private blockchains that can be built on mutual trust among authorized organizations. While at the same time, I think the use case shows how IoT can also benefit blockchain in return. While we talk about a lot of the things what blockchain can bring to IoT, but at the same time, IoT allows for edge computing. IoT allows for offloading some of, for example, the security management methods, data management methods to the edge, to the devices. So that on the blockchain side, we can focus more on the data. But if you're talking about privacy, if you think about data access, classifications, these are the things that can actually be done at the edge, right? So they kind of complement each other, in an industry that requires both high security, privacy standards, but at the same time, they really requires traceability and visibility. So I think healthcare is a very interesting use case. It's a very good industry to have broader use case for blockchain. And then again, of course, supply chain, automobile, and retail, these are very typical industry that can be beneficial from these technologies.
Right. And both of which, both healthcare and supply chain, are both industries that have been, very impacted by, the COVID pandemic over the last 2 years. So the very, very timely examples. Good. Well, Chris, and Fan and Juan Manuel, I want to thank all three of you for joining us here today on the latest episode of Long Story Short. I think your insight on the complex topics of blockchain and IoT have been very helpful for our audience. And again, I want to thank you for joining, and looking forward to having you on the show again next time.
Thank you, team.
Thank you, team.
Thank you, team.
Nice to meet you, everyone.
Thank you.
Look forward to
See you
next
around.
meeting.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
Take care.